Introduction. I grew up being an over-the-top fragile kid. My mom pampered me and sheltered me from the normal bumps and bruises that normal boys go through. Whenever I got hurt or didn't get things my way, I would cry very easily. I don't remember my two sisters or the other kids in the neighborhood crying like I did. Most of the time, when my friends would fall, they would get up as if nothing happened. But when I even barely skinned my knee when I fell from my skateboard, I would sob uncontrollably. As far as I can remember, I always had a very low threshold for pain, not just from physical pain, but emotional discomfort as well. When facing a challenge in elementary school, I would shudder, put my hands over my face, and wish I could be invisible. After a while, my teachers pretty much left me alone. At home, I rarely did any chores because I was always so vulnerable to hurting myself. By being so overly coddled and avoiding discomfort, I ended up relatively helpless. As I reached my adolescent years, I became better at censoring my urge to shed tears in front of the crowd, but inside, I was still bawling like an infant over trivial matters. When it came to really painful stuff that plagued teenagers like rejection and acne, I would fall apart so easily. When I was at my 8th grade dance and asked girls to dance with me and was turned down, I was totally devastated. The rest of the time, I would hide out in the dark corner while taking joy in seeing my buddies get turned down. But unlike me, they seemed to laugh it off, and it didn't affect their pursuit of finding hot chicks to talk to. As I grew up, I found myself admiring those that could tolerate loads of pain. Evel Knievel was my hero, not only because he had the balls to jump over a canyon, but also because he continued to do crazy stunts after breaking most of his bones. When Rocky came out, I went berserk. Having 2 black eyes, a bloody lip, and getting his ass kicked by Apollo Creed, but still wanting more was the kind of man I longed to be. I dreamed of being that guy that brushed off pain, gossip, or insults as it was nothing. This was the fantasy I had of myself. However, the reality was that I was still a pain-aversive young boy. The older I got, the more apparent it became. I just didn't have the raw toughness that my peers had, so I failed at sports and with girls. I just didn't get past the hump of overcoming anything too difficult, so I gave up very easily. This was pretty much the pattern of my teenage years. I would try something, but when it got hard, I wouldn't be able to handle it, so I quit. My threshold for failure, rejection, and physical exertion was so low that it prevented me from growing emotionally, but also physically. When I graduated high school, I was the shortest in my class and extremely puny. I barely weighed past 90 pounds. My whole life of failing to move past discomfort and being a quitter created who I was, and I hated every ounce of myself. When I started college, my self-loathing drove me to finally do something about my pathetic state. I was just so tired and ashamed of who I was. During my freshman orientation, I compared myself to the other guys, and I just stood out in a bad way because of my lack of size and timid behavior. In order to change, I knew I had to do something drastic, or else I was destined to be a walking embarrassment for the rest of my life. I joined a gym. Very soon after that, I discovered Arnold Schwarzenegger and read every issue of Muscle and Fitness. I bought in very quickly to the #1 commandment of bodybuilding, which is, of course, no pain, no gain. This mantra dominated my thinking whenever I picked up a weight. I worked out so hard and did set after set of bicep curls until my arms wanted to drop dead. Surprisingly, after avoiding discomfort for most of my life, I suddenly became a glutton for pain. I started to see the connection between muscle burning and growth. My new thirst for pain and sudden perseverance even shocked me as I would train so hard to the point that I thought I would collapse. I have no doubt that part of my drive to reach high levels of agony was a form of self-punishment I was giving myself for being a lifelong failure and scaredy cat. Within a matter of months, I started to fill out my shirts and gain some noticeable muscle on my thin frame. After that, I was hooked for life to weight training. With bodybuilding, I finally found the sport that I was possibly good at. Obviously, I didn't have the genetics to be the next Mr. Olympia, but I really excelled at bodybuilding because I was superb and way above average at one thing. I could tolerate loads of pain. Where this new threshold for discomfort came from was really mysterious to me. Was it an aptitude I had all along, or did I learn it overnight? How did I go from wincing over trivial matters to a machine that refused to let my hurt stop me? I really don't have a clear explanation for my sudden superpower to deflect pain, but I'm sure it was a combination of both an innate instinct and a skill that I acquired through experience. In fact, I strongly believe all of us have this natural inclination to handle loads of misery. There are just too many inspirational stories of individuals triumphing over unimaginable suffering. It's just part of the human spirit. The problem is that we are never taught this in school, including how to be resilient in the face of great pain. In my case, I was so overly protected and pampered that I never learned how to tolerate and rise above frustration. This was my childhood, but unfortunately for most of you, living in your comfort bubble is how you choose to live your adult life. Sadly, the result of not venturing into uncomfortable challenges has been detrimental to your well-being. I have my excuse. I was raised to be a pussy. But you don't. You choose every day to live life of an overly soft individual. The only way out of your safety zone is to expose yourself to uncomfortable situations. By doing so, you tap into your will and develop your immunity to pain. And that's what I did during my early years of bodybuilding. I wanted to change who I was so badly that I was willing to suffer on a daily basis. Getting bigger and facing pain became my new obsession in life. It consumed me so much that I transferred to USC when I was a sophomore. All the pros trained at either Gold's Gym or World Gym near Southern California Beach, and that's where I wanted to be. I joined both of these gyms. These two gyms were the most famous gyms during the early 80s. It was home to the best bodybuilders of all time, like Arnold, Franco Columbu, Lou Ferrigno, and Rachel McLish. It was filled with celebrities and athletes like Clint Eastwood, Sylvester Stallone, Kurt Russell, Hulk Hogan, Howie Long, Jose Canseco, Mark Gastineau, Reggie Jackson, Mickey Rourke, Michael Jordan, and the late Kobe Bryant. Also, it was the home of every wannabe that wanted to be a star, champion, or just famous. Every day the gym was buzzing with energy and intensity, as well as some really crazy-ass people. Some of them were freaky and flamboyant, but the strangeness never bothered me. I loved every minute of it. I was starstruck, but more than anything, I got to watch the best in the world train. The level of intensity I saw was way beyond anything I have ever seen before. The one common denominator everybody had at both gyms was the over-the-top capacity to suffer. Screaming, howling, and shouting out profanities from a vicious workout was the norm. So was thinking of new insults to agitate your training partner. There was no inhibition or the politically correct police back then, like there are today at your local Planet Fitness gyms. Both gyms were a factory of pain and offensive people. But don't get me wrong, we had loads of fun and laughs while seeking new ways of torturing ourselves. The majority of people trained and pushed themselves to failure and beyond mind-blowing. It was commonplace to see someone lift a heavy weight for a high number of reps, and when they seemed too tired and couldn't move the barbell another inch, they would dig deep and find a second wind and do even more reps. Some would go even further. They would drop the weight, pick up a lighter weight, and pound out even more reps. It was truly amazing to watch one train with such a desire to move past pain. This ability to go on when they were absolutely fatigued was the main theme in these two gyms. I was a 19-year-old sponge at the time. I picked up everything I was seeing and started applying it to my own training. I immediately began experimenting with the same type of hardcore training regimens that my heroes and idols were doing, such as drop sets, pyramids, supersets, forced reps, rest pause, super slow isometric reps, and the most painful of them all, the dreaded 20-rep squat. These advanced bodybuilding concepts took my physique and threshold for pain to another level. I was making substantial progress and flaunted my muscles with extra tight shirts and tiny male hot pants shorts that we all wore back then. Come to think of it, I still dressed like this. But even though I did the same training that Arnold and the other stars did, that was still not enough for me. I was an addict, a disturbed young man that associated pain with great joy, and I yearned for more. I soon created more ingenious and creative methods to inflict unbearable pain on myself. I exponentially upped the ante. Normal drop sets became triple and quadruple drop sets. I even started combining these painful protocols. A normal superset between two exercises didn't satisfy me. I had to do superset force reps with slow isometric holds, or some even stranger combinations that nobody else did before in the gym. I'm sure my peers thought I was nuts, which didn't bother me because the majority of the regulars had a screw or two loose. No doubt, I was a mad scientist, and the gym was my laboratory, as I was in pursuit of discovering new ways, and probably stupid ways, to put myself through hell. Inside my head, I was playing an imaginary game with those around me. I was competing in this make-believe Olympics with a whole gym to see who was the toughest bastard that can endure the most pain. I knew I couldn't compare my physique to others, as I was just a runt, and the majority of gym-goers were on the juice. I wasn't interested in a bodybuilding pose-down where we would compare our chest muscles to each other. My only inspiration was to be the one that can endure the most vicious form of self-inflicted agony. Whenever I trained and there was a person next to me working out, I always tried to outdo him with my capacity to surpass pain. It didn't matter if Arnold, Stallone, or the next future 300-pound Mr. Universe was next to me, or if I was only lifting a 40-pound dumbbell while the meathead next to me was hurling a 150-pound dumbbell. Muscle, strength, or aesthetics didn't matter. In my imagination, we would duel over who can tough out unbearable pain better. I wanted to show him that he didn't have what I had. In my mind, I always won. This is how competitive and sick I was. I had a different reality in my head that I vividly lived in. I routinely made up rivals and enemies for me to slay on a daily basis. I kept a mental scoreboard of all my victories. I was clearly deranged and overly obsessed with my quest to be invincible to pain. But I felt unique and special. This was my superpower, and for the first time in my life, I was damn proud of myself. And this hard work and new ways to train got my once frail body to grow. I peaked to around 175 pounds when I got to mid-20s. This was my gym personality. I sought discomfort and challenges. I was so passionate about training, I would buy every muscle mag and books and scour them for new ways to better myself. This was before the internet, and so there wasn't much information available. It didn't matter. What I learned, I used to tear it up at the gym. When I set a goal in my mind, I would push till I achieved it. No matter how hard it was, I would never quit. I kept on pushing and pressing until I hit my marks. Unsurprisingly, I wore out my training partners one by one. Most of the time, I would train by myself because nobody could hang with my crazy intensity. In the gym, I was a complete animal. But ironically, as soon as I stepped out of World's or Gold's gym, my feelings of dominance evaporated. I may have been a beast with my training, but my personal life was the complete opposite. I was back to being my old self of being hesitant, awkward, and afraid of challenges. Lack of alignment in my life. In the gym, I continued to wreck my body with excessive pain, which made me bigger and stronger. But in my real life, I ran from discomfort, which made me emotionally weak and void of any resilience. My pattern of attempting something difficult, having setbacks, and then just flat out giving up continued. I thought my big pecs and striated shoulders would shield me from disappointments, but it just gave me a false sense of security. Deep down, I was still as frail as ever. Wherever I failed, I felt completely exposed. My gym persona that I created as a savage beast started to feel extremely fake. I worried that others would see right through this facade and see the fearful coward that I really was. Back then, there was no big psychological term to call what I had. But now it was obvious that I was experiencing imposter syndrome and hiding my true, weak self behind my muscles. At times being found out would push me to even more crazy intensity with my training. There was so much rage in me that I was able to sustain my drive for many of my workouts. Other times I felt emotional drain from my problems and even more agony from running from them. But I just went through the motions with my training. My mind wasn't on my lifting, but on my personal issues that seemed to pile on top of each other, which I wasn't dealing with. Every day I woke up with a queasy feeling that something really terrible was going to happen to me. All this started to really grate on me and affect my training. My ability to tolerate pain suddenly dropped dramatically as my attention and focus went elsewhere. Instead of pushing through pain, I rushed and shortened most of my training because I told myself that I was too busy with essential errands. But the truth was that I was consumed with incessant worry from not dealing with my troubles. I went from killing it for one brutal hour to doing just a couple of bench presses and simple curls. A quick 10-minute bullshit workout without breaking a sweat became the norm. That was how far I fell off my pain-seeking adventures. By the time I got to my mid-30s, my resilience was weaker than ever. I was emotionally and financially struggling. I didn't have a real job or career. I failed to accomplish my lifelong dream of becoming an actor and slipped into a deep depression as one hopeless audition led to the next rejection. When my acting career stalled, I floated from one temporary job to another while trying to break into the screenwriting world. When my scripts failed to draw any attention, I just moved on to the next unpaid project. I just didn't have the resolve in me to persevere in the face of adversity. I just couldn't tolerate the constant rejection and psychological discomfort from major frustration. I coped by drinking heavily and smoking 2 packs a day. I was in so much pain, but I didn't know how to deal with it. Running from my problems and getting drunk was my solution. My relationships with women were just as rocky. I would fall in love very quickly, but could never get past the 1-month period. When the flings were over, I had a difficult time getting over the breakup and blamed myself for everything that went wrong. I would go through a major dark period where I would drink myself to the point of nightly blackouts. All these booze, smoking, and lousy relationships took their toll on my training. It was a struggle to train because, most of the time, I was hungover, didn't sleep enough, and was living on fast food. I lost my unique skill to absorb pain because I was in so much mental and spiritual discomfort. I just couldn't go to the gym and add more pain to my already broken self. As a result, I stopped gaining muscle and instead put on tons of fat, especially around my gut. For the first time in my life, instead of hearing about how bony and fragile I was, my peers started to tease me for having a beer gut. In the beginning, I kind of liked it. It was a sign that my past of being that skinny weasel was finally over. I was no longer that 98-pound weakling that everybody used to pick on. That part of me is now gone forever. I settled pretty easily in my new lifestyle and identity as a buff guy with a proud beer belly and continued to eat onion rings, fries, and drink down 6-packs on a nightly basis. I was okay with this view of myself, but by the time I reached my 40s, I wasn't that fit dude anymore. I was fat, soft, and pathetic. Plus, I was ultra-sensitive to criticism and constantly defensive. My ability to tolerate anything uncomfortable was at an all-time low. I would say that I am even worse now than when I was as a child, if you can believe that. This is because when I struggled as a teenager, I couldn't soothe myself with alcohol. Now, I was a full-blown drunk. All my troubles and problems that I ran and denied were there started to crumble and crush me to the point that I lost all faith in myself. I was completely lost with no sense of direction. My life was nothing but a pure disappointment. New beginnings. I looked in the mirror and hated what I saw. All the hard work and fire I had to transform my bony frame into a muscular beast were pretty much gone. My face changed just as well, gone with my jawline and replaced with a Buddha-like double chin. Somewhere during my downward spiral, I picked up the bad habit of smoking. It started out as bumming cigs for my friends, but ended up as an awful pack-a-day habit that went along with my heavy drinking. Besides being a severe alcoholic, my life was in shreds. I failed in being an actor, bodybuilder, screenwriter, novelist, teacher, trainer, and wannabe ladies' man. 20 years in Los Angeles. I had little to show for it. The only thing that I had, apart from my fat self, was my victimhood. But it was during this extreme low point that I noticed a particular trend. The majority of my buff bodybuilding buddies, gorgeous actress acquaintances, and brilliant writers were also on a downward spiral with their life. These last 2 decades were really unkind to them as well. I would say tougher and ever more devastating than what was happening to me. Most of the former ginormous beasts that roamed around in golds just shriveled up and returned back to their normal selves. Some of the most beautiful women I knew lost their teeth and good looks and became crack addicts, while others got so fat I couldn't recognize them. While a few of those that had so much potential and that I was 100% sure that someday would become rich and famous ended up hanging or shooting themselves in the head. I just couldn't fathom the fact that so many of my peers who had so much going for them gave up and completely lost it. I knew many of these people from Golds and Worlds, and besides being super ambitious, most of them were extremely fit and gave it their all in their workouts. There were probably many reasons that led to their downfalls, but what we all lacked was the strong-willed resilience to overcome adversity when our dreams were shattered. The biggest tragedy is that we all had the capacity and skills to push through extreme pain in the gym, but couldn't apply the same tenacity when life hit us hard. This is so sad to me, because the hardcore training we did during these years at Golds and Worlds should have set us up and given us the necessary tools to handle any crisis. Sure, we learned how to move past pain in the gym, but we never really transferred this skill of rising above discomfort to our personal life. The bodybuilding magazines, books, and champions promised and proposed how training can make us better in every area of our life. But they never gave us explicit instructions on how to make this transition. This lack of plan on how to transfer your high threshold of pain in the gym to your personal life is the major flaw in most training. The bodybuilders and strength experts of yesteryears, and even today, have it almost right. Training will enhance your life. But what is wrong with this concept is that they all assumed that it would happen automatically and without much thought. They wrongly believed that being strong and tough in the gym would naturally evolve to also being strong and tough in life. But this is not the case. Your never-give-up attitude in the gym will not just naturally unfold once you step into the real world. This effortless transition is never going to happen. You have to put in the time to tie in the resilience you gain from your athletic pursuit to your current obstacles. You have to be completely intentional and extremely deliberate about applying what you learn about rising above pain in your training to your life. And that's what I did. My life after CrossFit. I want to be clear that this is not a pro CrossFit book. I currently don't follow any CrossFit protocol. Like many athletes, I've had a fallout with the CrossFit world, and have no intentions of starting up again with them. If you are doing CrossFit, I'm not going to discourage you or argue against it. In fact, if you are enjoying yourself and making gains, I highly encourage you to continue with this sort of training. Having said this, joining a CrossFit box was one of the best things I ever did. I discovered CrossFit in the early stages of its development. This was before it became a mega fitness conglomerate and was just an underground and renegade way of training. I stumbled on it after reading an article that called the CrossFit system the hardest workout ever. I put out my cigarette and dragged my fat ass to join. I was so broke at the time that I couldn't afford the monthly fees, so I just did drop-in classes when I had extra cash after I stocked up on my bottles of red wine. Saying CrossFit was difficult was a huge understatement, especially for an out-of-shape drunk like me in his mid-40s. Since I didn't do any aerobic work, the shock of high-intensity workouts on my nicotine-filled lungs was horrible. The early months of CrossFitting, which required learning new skills and tons of running, were filled with constant frustration, disappointment, and pure embarrassment. Many times I wanted to quit, like the others who took one CrossFit class and never came back. But I persisted. In the back of my head was the image of all those fit and beautiful people that let themselves go. I was a member of this soft group of individuals, and I knew there was something terribly wrong with me. If I didn't learn how to handle life, I would be a goner and would have a tragic end just like many of them. So instead of giving up like I normally did, I threw myself headfirst into the constant discomfort that CrossFit offered. The best thing about CrossFit is that it reconnected me to the only thing that I was exceptionally at. I was back at suffering. Every workout, I vowed to raise my threshold to another level, even if it killed me. It took a while, but I started to make gradual improvements in my workouts, stamina, and strength. During certain brutal WODs, I literally felt like I was dying. But just like how I was able to take on the physical punishment during my early bodybuilding days, I now was able to do the same with my CrossFit training. I knew that once I felt the agony of the WOD, my peers would feel it too. But instead of slowing me down, the pain energized me. Whenever I saw my CrossFit brothers and sisters kneeling over and struggling to breathe with a look of panic on their faces, it sent me into a frenzy, which invigorated me. I knew in my heart that I could handle the pain better than anyone else. This capacity to take on loads of physical and mental punishment is what started to separate me from the others. Instead of backing away from pain, I dived straight into it. In every CrossFit class, I was usually the oldest and the least athletic, but I always felt I had the advantage over the rest. The ability to suffer was my sole talent, and I was going to exploit the fuck out of it. The turning point came when I was doing the famous Murph workout, which consisted of a 1-mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and another 1-mile run. It is one of the hardest workouts in the CrossFit regimen. During the final 1 mile, while I was running, I realized that nobody was around me. Was I this far behind? Am I going to be the last to finish? Where the hell is everybody? I kept looking around until it dawned on me. I was so far ahead of everybody else. The rest of the athletes were still doing their push-ups, pull-ups, and squats. At that moment, I knew I had finally arrived. I was peaking with my new sense of athleticism, and my whole life started to flourish. I had confidence in myself, which I never had before. Everything was going my way until I had a major injury and torn ligaments on 3 sides of my ankle. The doctor told me that the injury was so severe I wouldn't be able to run for at least a year. I fell into a deep depression after hearing the bad news. I was on a roll with my athletic development, and it was over in a split second. It was just another unfair example of how nothing ever goes right for me. But instead of feeling sorry for myself like I used to do, I went on the extreme offense. I applied the lessons of perseverance and handling letdowns I got from my CrossFit training to my rehab. My approach toward rehabbing my ankle soon became eerily similar to how I trained at CrossFit. The rehabilitation process was excruciating, but I endured all the tedious work, setbacks, and occasional bad news with the same determination and higher than normal pain threshold I had developed back from CrossFit. I told myself over and over that if I can overcome devastating pain in my training, I can also endure the constant frustration of minimal progress during physical therapy. I persisted, kept my big fat mouth from complaining, and just forged on. I was back in running form in less than 6 weeks. This was the experience that allowed me to finally see how moving past pain in my training can be directly applied to my life's problems. At this point, I've been training for over 25 years, but I never really figured how to transfer my best persona in the gym to the real world. This was the missing piece to a life dedicated to training, but the crucial final piece of the puzzle had eluded me and left me feeling incomplete. But once I made this connection, I became even more obsessed with learning how I can elevate my threshold for pain in all areas of my life. However, knowledge and information on this subject were very scant. But when I came across articles and scientific research on how to raise my tolerance to pain, I devoured them. Everything I studied, I experimented on myself in the gym and in my personal life. Once these concepts were clear to me, I had my clients put them to the test as well. I've been doing this for over a decade now, and I'm still learning new ways to move past discomfort. It's a never-ending quest that I never get tired of. You can easily say that I found my purpose in life with pain. Don't get me wrong, I detest physical and mental discomfort as much as you do, but I love what overcoming pain gives me. Ever since I started applying mental strategies to enhance my ability to handle discomfort, my life has flourished. I am 100 times more grounded and have grown in my training, work, relationships, and personal development. What was missing in my life in the last 20 years was this lack of pain. I needed pain, not because I love tormenting myself, but because suffering is my compass. Discomfort is a sign that I'm going in the right direction. You can learn to do the same. The benefits of pain. Having a higher threshold for pain will allow you to consistently overcome your problems, reach your goals, and develop your resolve. But there are even more benefits once you learn to endure and outdo your agony much more. The cold hard fact is that there is a significant growth in pain. I'm not just talking about your muscles getting bigger. That is obvious. But what isn't so apparent is that your sense of who you are will be enhanced as well. Your whole character will be transformed. Instead of seeing yourself as a person who can't handle difficulty, you'll begin to discover you have a hidden reserve of strength in you that you never tapped into before. There is nothing more empowering than learning to go further and do more than you previously thought. You can't get this rush of confidence in who you are any other way. No drug or pill can give you this immense faith in yourself than enduring and outlasting hard and painful predicaments. Invaluable self-knowledge is the gift that suffering will give you. It is about discovering that your inadequate beliefs about yourself were false and inaccurate. Learning that you are more than capable of handling whatever bullshit the world hands to you is life-changing. Once you truly believe you are the kind of person that can withstand the cruelties and unfairness of life, you will dismantle your poor perception of yourself as a helpless individual who can't handle a little anguish. Your identity of who you are begins to shift. Instead of describing yourself as a person who can't tolerate hardship and uncertainty, you will believe without a doubt that you are a die-hard warrior who keeps coming back for more. You have it in you to keep on going, no matter how hurt you are or how badly you want to give up. With this new and empowering self-identity, you become truly unstoppable in life. This is the power pain can give you if you face it and outlast it. Unfortunately, most people can't get themselves to step into agonizing situations. They may find the inspiration every once in a while to do it, but that won't cut it. If you want to break free from being stuck in your overly coddled lifestyle, you must consistently and on a daily basis stare down your uncomfortable challenges and throw yourself into the fire. Your transformation won't happen overnight. This may be a deal breaker for you, but this is the candid truth. I know this is a hard sell, because who in their right mind would want to indulge and volunteer themselves to more pain? Life is already full of hardship the way it is. Plus, there are thousands of courses on the internet that will tell you how to do simple tasks to become successful, like self-hypnosis, positive affirmations, deep breathing, or some other puff-puff nonsense that promises to change you overnight with the least amount of effort and virtually pain-free. If you want to waste your time and money, put this book down and jump over to their New Age section. The majority of their advice will get you to feel good, optimistic, and safe. But these qualities are the last things you want to feel if you want authentic change. If you seek comfort while trying to improve yourself, it won't do a damn thing. If you want substantial transformation, you must face painful situations that cause you to feel somewhat nauseous, a strong sense of doom, and uncertainty. I advocate the complete opposite of what the mainstream self-help gurus will tell you. This is why increasing your ability to handle stress and chaos is so vital. Only through mentally or physically taxing challenges will you grow. In order for these tasks to stretch your capacities, there must be a degree of failing and falling flat on your face. The good news is that life offers you these opportunities every day, and probably for free. But instead of investing yourself into these money-free yet painful predicaments, you avoid them. The worst part is that you actually convince yourself that you can outsmart your problems by not facing them. This is completely delusional thinking. But I understand, because I've been in your shoes, and I have no doubt that many of my acquaintances at Gold's and World Gym, who I thought were destined for stardom, did the same, and hid from their personal troubles. By not dealing with your demons and responsibilities, we all suffered poorly. Unfortunately, we all paid a huge price for our refusal to deal with our life's problems, until everything crumbled and all our lies and deceptions fell on us. I was one of the lucky ones. I got a second chance at life. And so can you. It all came down to this. I was in great pain because I avoided personal hardship, but in order for me to dig myself out of my hole, I had to take some actions that were going to cause me great pain. Either way, I was going to suffer. I made the decision that if I was going to be in pain, I might as well get something out of it. Hence, I made a lifelong commitment to suffer better. I wish there was an easy and less agonizing way you can empower yourself, but there isn't. The equation is simple and straightforward. The more uncomfortable situations you put yourself in, the higher your threshold will be, and the greater the confidence you will have in your ability to be resilient. The way to get better in life is through painful mistakes, frustration, lame decisions, heartache, and all the other stuff that hurts. Overcoming and learning from your suffering will help you grow and better yourself. I think we all can agree that this is the direction one must take. Nobody will argue against this. If this is true, then logically, you must partake in even more discomfort in your life. A lot more. You have to make up for all the times you ran and avoided challenges because it has softened and diminished you in a very bad way. Having a low threshold for difficulties had made you very incapable and useless. If you continue to lounge around in your comfort zone, you will soon be irrelevant. Unfortunately, that may already be the case. You may not want to hear this, but it's about time you did. What's really holding you back in life? What's missing in your life is the capacity to handle discomfort and move forward. Your lack of will to move past pain and then give up are the main reasons you feel so stuck and not make significant strides in your life. But if you can condition your mind to move past the painful burning of your muscles or the uncomfortable feeling of your heart pumping from a high-intensity workout, then you can sure as hell teach yourself to tolerate the agony of unexpected heartbreak or life-altering crisis and go on. All you have to do is take the lessons, strategies, and insights on what you learn to overcome pain in your training and apply the same procedures when facing real-life troubles. In order to do this, you must be as specific and deliberate as possible. I want to reiterate this once more. It will not happen automatically, or you will see changes overnight. You have to meticulously hone in on these skills and experiment with them on a daily basis in the real world. Once you can do this over time, your ability to persevere in the gym should cross over and strengthen your resilience in your personal life. But the opposite will also happen. Solidifying your capacity to overcome obstacles and not giving up on your life problems should have a direct effect in improving your pain threshold and stamina to go on with your training in the gym, dojo, track, or whatever athletic endeavor you are pursuing. Having a mutualistic and symbolic relationship where you raise your tolerance to suffering, persevere, and carry on in both your training and in life is the point of this book. When you focus on your ability to withstand pain and persist in the gym and in your life, these two character traits should complement each other. As one gets stronger, so does the other one. This cross-adaptation is what you are seeking. To thrive in life, you need to have a high threshold for discomfort in all areas of your life, because getting through the pain is how you break barriers in life. You already understand that pain and perseverance help you in your training. If you run harder and faster and don't give up, you will develop your stamina and become a better runner. If you lift heavier weights and don't puss out, you will put on more muscle. If you have a spar with better fighters who usually give you a good beating and you don't quit, you will eventually become a better MMA athlete. In the agony of training are great benefits if you can withstand the constant discomfort, go on, and find the lessons in your pain. The same philosophy of riding through emotional discomfort can be applied to your real-life problems. If you start a new business and you don't give up when setbacks and disappointments come along, you can be successful. When you have been laid off, you must avoid the temptation to be satisfied with living on unemployment and being a deadbeat. Instead, you must get your act together, go through the dreadful process of fixing your resume, applying for jobs, and going through interviews to finally get a chance to start a new career. Or if you have been unexpectedly dumped by your ex and really down, you must hold it together. You must withstand the emotional pain and resist the desire to constantly drink or do drugs to escape your anguish. These examples are all real-life examples of resilience that we all will eventually face. Nobody gets a free pass from being broke, having their dreams shattered, and getting betrayed. You must learn to endure high levels of rejection, stress, and frustration while continuing to do what needs to be done. The ability to navigate your discomfort while moving forward will determine the quality of life you will have. Unfortunately, the average person is mentally weak and soft. They easily fall apart and struggle to recover. I saw this happen to all those great-looking and fit people at Gold's and World Gym. As I got older, I noticed this more and more with just the bulk of the people I've known. Sure, I've known some people who have gone from rags to riches, beat cancer, survived major tragedies, and are full of health and energy. These people are really inspiring and great examples of how durable the human spirit is. But this group of resilient warriors is extremely rare. The rest of my acquaintances continue to skid from life and let themselves go. Some even seem to have given up, as the beatdown from life clearly shows in their aged faces, out-of-shape bodies, and disgruntled mindsets. I suspect that many of them have serious psychological issues. This lack of resolve has become more apparent ever since the coronavirus and the national lockdown happened. The masses have gotten worse in all aspects of their life since the pandemic began. The virus is terrible, but that's no excuse for you to eat chips and cookies all day and neglect your training, nor is it a valid reason to put your life on hold. Life has been more difficult in 2020, but life still goes on. You must continue to face your challenges and withstand the complications and inconvenience that COVID-19 has brought upon you. Every day, we face the choice to either harden up or bring on Netflix. Sadly, the majority will take the path of least resistance and snuggle up in their complacency. Instead of growing, getting stronger, and upping your ability to take on pain during this crucial time in history, the opposite has happened. You have regressed, gotten weaker, and lowered your threshold for pain. Instead of evolving during this crucial period of mankind, you devolved. This is a sad commentary on the world these days. I'm frightened about the virus too, but I'm more scared of the fatal disease of being a lifelong quitter and soft individual. Living in constant fear and not confronting challenges is the real death sentence. Unfortunately, this is the current downward trend for mankind at this moment, and it's not a pretty sight. Our species evolved from change and pain. Avoiding both of these factors will weaken mankind's survival rate greatly. I'm already seeing this trend with our newest generation of young adults. Instead of building on their resilience, these millennials are a bunch of whiners, complainers, and don't know what real hard work feels like. They may be warriors behind the keyboards when they troll others, or kick ass on Fortnite. But put them on a real battlefield, and they will be exposed for who they aren't. There are so many reasons why these new up-and-comers are so fragile and breakable. They are brought up in a world where convenience, artificial confrontation, and immediate pressure are the norm. Stepping out of their comfort level just takes too much effort for many of them. Entertainment, food, porn, and drugs are just a tap away. All you have to do is click on an app on your phone, and it's instantly yours. Technology has given these youths a warped sense of reality by making everything overly accessible without any sense of struggle attached to it. By making things too easy to obtain, they indirectly never learn to move past adversities and delay gratification. As a consequence, they have an ultra-low tolerance for frustration and exertion. If you think these contemporary cohorts are a bunch of pansies, the next breed that grew up as infants in the height of the COVID era with overly pampered parents, lack of physical activity, and constant anxiety is going to be way worse. I can't imagine how delicate and frail they will be. This negative swing of not being able to bear discomfort and having a weak will to go on can stunt the human race. You may think that I'm overly catastrophizing, and I probably am, but we are a species built on strength and survival. These are two traits that may be extinct down the road and already decimated in many of you. At the very least, your soft lifestyle is already killing you. That's no exaggeration. By lowering your ability to endure pain, you have made yourself vulnerable to not only the virus, but also to life's inevitable problems. Unfortunately, there isn't a vaccine you can take to make you immune to suffering. Neither is there a jab that can make you suddenly brave. You must inoculate yourself on a daily basis with exposure to painful tasks to develop your courage and ability to rise above discomfort. In these trying and volatile times, having the capability to deal with stress, disappointment, and a negative crisis is a must. If you are not willing to suffer for personal growth, you will end up suffering for some asshole or unfortunate circumstances. Either way, you will experience pain. You might as well get something good out of your agony. Being resilient is the most important quality to have, and it is clearly missing in your life right now. The good news is that nobody was born with this ability to naturally preserve. You can attain it through daily rigor and tons of self-discipline. This book will show you how. A unique approach. What makes the information in this program so distinct is that it doesn't separate your ability to handle pain in your training and life. The strategies I offer treat both physical and mental pain equally. You may argue that physical and emotional discomfort are two different things. On paper, there seems to be a strong distinction between physical and mental pain, as there are obvious major differences of discomfort when your body is straining from attempting a 450-pound deadlift, when compared to the agonizing self-doubt that's going on in your head when you sit quietly in the waiting room of your upcoming job interview. But all challenging situations affect both the mind and body. For example, when it comes to doing a brutal WOD, the real pain isn't necessarily the workout itself, but the anguish and doubts that happen before the actual training session begins. The same is true when facing real-life obstacles. The agony starts in your head, but when your fight and flight is triggered, your stomach hurts, muscles get tight, and pain is felt throughout your body. When it comes to hardship in the gym and in life, you will feel both mental and physical discomfort at the same time. In fact, a recent scientific study suggests that emotional, mental, and physical pain are almost perceived to be the same thing by the brain. According to Forbes magazine, although the brain does not process emotional pain and physical pain identically, research on neural pathways suggests that there is a substantial overlap between the experience of physical and social pain. The cascading effects that occur and regions activated in our brains, and therefore our reactions to the acute pain, appear to be similar. What this may mean is that your mind can't differentiate between the physical agony you feel during a gruesome leg workout or the emotional and mental stress you go through when you are being grilled during a job interview. This is not a bad thing either. I would even say that this is a great thing, because it simplifies the whole process. Having the attitude that pain is pain or discomfort is discomfort is the right mindset. Also, where you are is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you are feeling anguish on the playing field, octagon, home, boardroom, or in your business. Struggle is struggle. The goal is always the same. Deal with the pain and don't quit. Having this belief that all suffering is created equally will help you progress faster in this elevated pain threshold system. You are already halfway there too. Presently, you are inspired. You can tolerate the agony from a hard workout. When you leave the gym, you usually feel good about yourself from the sense of accomplishment you just achieved. This is a common example of how your training can have a carryover effect on your personal life. But being cheerful usually doesn't last. When your good mood goes out of the window, you are back to your same lost self, minus any valuable insights on fortitude that you should have learned from your workout. Another major problem with your training is that you are very irregular with your ability to move past higher levels of intensity. Some days, you're a beast and can kick your pain to the curb. But the majority of your workouts, you train with less aggression and more apprehension, as you stop right before your lungs start to swell or your muscles begin to burn. You remain in your comfort zone and go through the motions with your predictable workouts while avoiding WODs that really challenge you. This threshold-enhancing training will get you to handle more advanced workouts and push harder on a consistent level so that you can manage stronger gains in your athletic endeavor. Once you smash through your pain barriers in the gym, you can transfer your insights to help you fight through your hostile setbacks in your daily life. If you can tap into the reserves of strength and toughness in your training, you can also call upon it when faced with real-life problems. It's almost a cliche these days, but on the internet, you will see these fit-as-fuck Instagrammers declaring that they are training for life. This is fine and dandy, and I'm all for this. But where's the substance behind their claim? Are they providing a clear-cut system with procedures to show how you can make this leap from gym to real life? Are they revealing any secrets to ramp up your threshold to pain? Are these YouTubers showing you how to persist and go on when your legs are burning, lungs on fire, or when you are depressed and lose all hope in yourself? I doubt that. This is because you're talking to someone who, on a daily basis, scours scientific research, personal testimonies, books, and articles on resilience and rising above pain. I definitely would not call myself an expert on this subject, but just a crazy and obsessed man who is on a never-ending search to find the Holy Grail on how to get through torment and carry on. To my knowledge, there isn't one program that systematically shows you how to increase your capacity to handle pain and drive on in both your training and how you live your life. If there was, I would have found it. But there isn't. This book is the only one of its kind. Also, this book is not like the rest of the self-help and personal development courses that are predicated on being happy, positive, and living a stress-free lifestyle. It is definitely not a feel-good book. It is more of a feel-bad one, as I encourage you to seek out suffering and negative situations that are full of stress. But finding purpose in your pain is how you experience true happiness. Once again, the mainstream has it all wrong and backward. The majority of people pursue happiness by avoiding things that make them uncomfortable. Instead, they do things that bring them instant pleasure without immediate pain, like buying things, eating, drinking, or watching TV. This may lead to temporary joy, but it doesn't last. In fact, once the novelty wears off, they eventually feel sad, and then the emotional suffering of feeling worthless begins to set in. Most people get so depressed because they habitually skip out from painful tasks that would lead to what they want in life. As a result of dodging their agonizing duties, they feel unfulfilled and dissatisfied. Ironically, you get the most fulfillment in life from pain. Moving toward what really matters to you is always filled with discomfort and headache, but once you overcome the uncomfortable obstacles that come with what is important to you, you achieve true satisfaction. This book isn't about happiness per se, but the byproduct of moving past your suffering is immense joy. If you use the 10 mental strategies in your gym and out of the gym, you will make profound improvements in your capacity to take on pain and break free from your limitations. Once you learn how to shove your discomfort to the ground, you will be in incredible shape, overcome your worst adversities, and reach your dreams. By doing so, you will thrive and suffer better in every area of your life. Chapter 1. The Science and Non-Scientific Approaches to Suffering Better. As I mentioned in the intro, when I first started my journey to improving my capacity to bear pain, there weren't many materials out there in the pre-internet world. Even when Google was launched, information was very limited. However, I figured out that I was looking in the wrong places. Pain has always been with us ever since we evolved. No group of people has explored and advanced their training in pain evolution more than the Stoics and the Buddhists. To write about these two extraordinary philosophies would take volumes of chapters. Most of it would be boring, while some of it is filled with major insights that is the core of how to suffer better. Plus, I have no doubt that many of you don't want to hear about how a bunch of out-of-shape bald dudes in robes and sandals lived. You prefer to learn about how fit and ripped warriors like Navy SEALs or billionaires overcome their painful obstacles and succeed. I hear you. But your heroes are directly and indirectly influenced by the methods practiced by these individuals in the BC time period. In fact, what they did thousands of years ago is still the ideal model to overcome pain. I'm not only going to deliver a long and dull homage to the gods of pain, but I will also give you a quick summary of how crucial their work was. They set up the foundation for this training and had an invaluable influence on me. I have no doubt they will do the same for you. Let's pay our tribute to these men that sashayed around in silk nightgowns and flip-flops. They lived in a time period where famine, lawless savagery, and brutal anarchy were the norm. No doubt, they were 1,000 times tougher than you and I will ever be. Now let's learn from the best. The Founding Fathers of Pain Tolerance. There are many differences between the Stoics and Buddhists, but they also have some uncanny similarities too. First of all, they both didn't see suffering as a bad thing. It's only a hindrance if you perceive it as a negative experience. The problem you have is that you perceive your unfortunate circumstance as some sort of punishment or just bad karma. The Stoics do not think so. Popular Stoics like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus believe that your pain is actually a sign of good luck. It is an opportunity to grow and get stronger. To the Stoics, there is always a hidden blessing in disguise in the agony. In order to grow from your pain, you must have the attitude that suffering is always a catalyst for personal growth. The fat Zen master also saw suffering as an empowering event. One of the Buddha's first noble truths is life is suffering. For centuries, many people, including me, assumed that this was a very cynical look at life. I always thought he meant that life is going to royally suck. The Buddha said that life is about suffering, but he never said suffering is something terrible. We all just assumed that he implied this. The Buddha actually taught that nirvana and enlightenment are found in our suffering. He even goes on to say that if you have more happiness, then you must increase your suffering. Both the Stoics and the Buddhists saw suffering as a gateway to fulfillment and personal power. Your suffering will lead you to massive joy and growth when you get through it. When you understand the value of your suffering, you will view all your upcoming pain as a worthy offering. Changing your relationship with pain and seeing it more as a gift is not an easy thing to do, but this book will show you how. Once you understand that there is an unlimited strength on the other side of suffering, you will have a new and a more empowering definition of your adversities. Instead of avoiding situations that cause intense discomfort, you will gravitate toward them because of what you will gain from enduring and outlasting the tribulation. The second thing both schools of thought had in common is that they saw suffering as mostly mental. If you are in pain, the Stoics will tell you that your pain is real, but the suffering is caused by your judgment of the pain. It's not what happens in your external surroundings that evokes the stress, but what is going on in your inner world that is making you miserable. The beauty of this approach is that pain is all subjective. For example, if you miss that three-point shot to win the game, you don't have to see it as a sign that you are a failure or a terrible basketball player. Instead, see the event from a different perspective. It is an example that you had the balls to take the shot, or your coach had confidence in you to attempt it. By analyzing the event with an empowering approach, you can ease your suffering. The Buddhists see suffering as something that is in your head as well. Like the Stoics, they believe that if you feel pain, your agony is genuine, but the anguish is caused by your mental attachment to your desires. In 99.999% of the cases, your desire is not to be in the shitty predicament you are currently in. By fighting, denying, and attempting to suppress your pain, you only cause yourself more suffering. Another way to look at this is by whining, complaining, and wishing that this awful thing didn't happen. By doing this, you only make things worse. For example, if you got fired and all you did was bitch about your asshole boss and wish that you were never fired, you won't alleviate your anguish. In fact, all the negative crumbling while fighting the reality of being fired will probably make you feel more like crap. According to Buddha, all suffering is generated by your mind. It is the battle that you have with yourself about not accepting the awful circumstances that is causing you so much inner turmoil. The Buddha suggests that you embrace the pain instead. This does not mean that you have to like what happened. Letting go of your desire to end the pain will free you. It sounds very counterproductive, but this is how you lessen the stress that you are going through. Overcoming the emotional beatdown caused by your mind is very tricky. Your mind is very cunning, and it knows how to beat you down like no other enemy. When you have an all-out battle with your mind, it always wins. You lose, and ultimately give up. But the techniques in this book will show you how to work with your mental capacity. Once you can get your mind to finally work with you and not against you, you will tap into a vessel of power that you never knew existed within you. And finally, both the Stoics and the Buddhists believe that you must practice being in pain on a daily basis. It's almost a cliche now, but every wannabe guru is preaching the virtues of stepping out of your comfort zone. But these two ancient philosophies preached learning into discomfort as a lifestyle before it was ever in vogue like it is now. These dudes were way ahead of their time. The Stoics purposely put themselves in challenging predicaments to develop their strength and resilience. They occasionally practiced getting uncomfortable in order to better themselves for the future. Their intention was to use the pain as often as they could to improve themselves. For example, Seneca was known to intentionally practice poverty by dressing like a pauper, living on the streets, and fending for food. The goal wasn't to punish himself, but to let the pain prepare him for tomorrow's misfortunes. The Stoics' belief in a constant stream of discomfort was this: train often in a simulated crisis before the real crisis begins. Author and contemporary Stoic Tim Ferriss said it beautifully. The more you schedule and practice discomfort deliberately, the less unplanned discomfort will throw off your life and control your life. The Buddhists were on the same page with their inclination to constantly seek out discomfort instead of running from it. Not only did they advocate facing fearful situations every day, but to confront and sit with your own painful thoughts and emotions whenever they appeared. But most people don't like being confronted with their debilitating thoughts and uncomfortable feelings, so they hide and elude the messages that their painful emotions are trying to convey to them. Although avoidance is the most common coping mechanism, it is, hands down, the worst form. The Buddhists felt that avoidance caused more harm than whatever you are trying to avoid. To prevent yourself from being in avoidance mode, they believe that you must face what you are afraid of as a daily practice while letting your uncomfortable feelings surface at the same time. For example, when I was over my head in debt and IRS problems, I avoided thinking about my problems like the plague. Whenever my thoughts and worries came up, I would get sick in my stomach. Instead of dealing with my problems, I drank myself silly to make the pain and negative self-talk go away. But when I sobered up, my troubles multiplied as I sank deeper into a hole. Once I committed to making it a daily routine to work on my money issues while simultaneously allowing my self-doubt and painful emotions to be in the background, I began to overcome my troubles. The Stoics and Buddhists believe that you must seek both external and internal discomfort in your everyday existence. This means that you must lean into situations that make you queasy and man up when you have discouraging thoughts and feelings of doubt. Confronting unpleasant situations and emotions on a daily basis is never a joyous event, but I will show you how to make this a productive habit that you do automatically without question. The Stoics and Buddhists were the OGs of pain fighters. They both believed that pain is constant in life, so you might as well be good at it. The more you practice and understand your suffering, the less you will suffer. This statement seems like a complete oxymoron, but it really isn't. Pain is all about your perception and in your head, so you might as well get to know it on a daily basis. Their self-exploration and courage had paved the way for us all. Their work is immeasurable and has influenced the next generations of those who want to take their pain threshold to the next level. Leading the way to elevating your ability over discomfort are 4 principal players, 2 brilliant scientists, a prolific runner and writer, and 1 crazy badass Navy SEAL. These 4 men are revolutionary thinkers when it comes to rising above pain, so you and I can suffer better in life. The science of suffering. I never thought I would geek out over science and statistics. From what I remember, I got an F in both biology and introduction to chemistry in high school. Come to think of it, I didn't do so well in algebra or geometry either. Numbers and laboratory experiments weren't for me. At that time, I was the only Asian in my high school to flunk out of these classes. At least, that's what I thought back then. Now, when it comes to legit scientific studies on pain threshold, I'm all over it. I don't find reading these journals boring. I went from being addicted to internet porn to now being obsessed with research on improving our pain capacity skills. Instead of jerking myself off, I'm now on a mission to improving the world by enhancing our capacity to perceive through pain. It is a pretty good trade-off, to say the least. However, the majority of the research is on giving relief to those suffering from chronic pain. This is a noble act. I applaud all those who dedicate their lives to helping those in constant pain. Although the methods in this book may help those who are hurting 24/7 from inflammation, disease, and accidents, a better alternative is to seek professional help. Chronic pain is completely different from what I do. The pain that I focus on is the discomfort from physical and mental challenges to improve athletic and personal growth. These are 2 totally separate genres in the pain world. Also, much of the current research on improving pain threshold is done through pharmaceuticals. Drugs may help one ease their pain and anxiety, which is cool with me. No judgment here. Whatever works for those in agony, I'm 100% for. But that's not the route I'm interested in. I'm investigating the power of the mind. I believe our psychology is the most neglected aspect of our arsenal against pain. My research is all about how our minds can lift us over the most unfortunate situations and unimaginable pain thrown at us and make us more powerful. Once again, the data on this subcategory of pain is very limited. But with what there is, the information is beyond remarkable. One thing is for sure, you can handle loads of unspeakable anguish than you ever imagined. And the news gets even better. Having a high pain threshold is not something inherent or you were born with. It is a skill that you can get better at if you hone it. No group of people exemplifies this more than the dominating long-distance Kenya runners from a small tribe called the Kalenjin. Those in the sporting world have long been envious of the group's uncanny ability to ride through pain and win gold medals. Although some may argue that these Kenya runners have superior genetics, that's only part of the story. The other half is their hundreds of years of ritual of overcoming great agony. Young boys from the age of 12 begin practicing pain for 3 years with self-inflicting facial burns and organized beatings to get them ready for their culture's rite of passage when they reach 15. This manhood ritual is about one thing, having the ability to endure high levels of suffering and then finding perseverance. This journey into unspeakable pain begins with the boys taking off their clothes and then crawling through a tunnel filled with spiky and stinging needles. Once the young men get through the cave, they are beaten with sticks, especially around the sensitive part of the ankle. If that's not enough pain inflicted on these young lads, their knuckles are squeezed together through a vise, and the acid from the stinging needles is smothered and slashed all over the balls of these bleeding boys. Then comes the grand finale of pain. The boys are circumcised without any anesthesia or clean surgical tools. The cut is all done with a sharp stick. The foreskin of the penis is then tied in a bow. One side is pierced, and the head of the penis is pushed through the opening. In this barbaric ritual, the young boys must go through this whole experience without flinching. If they make even a small sound or dismayed expression, he is labeled a coward and not allowed a wife. However, if he passes the test, he is then taken to the outskirts of the village and told to ignore his pain and run at top speed back to his home. And that's how the Kenyan tribe creates these running machines that seem to defy pain and break world records. It's definitely a culture that glorifies and takes pride in its resilience. Nelson Mandela went through a similar dick-cutting procedure when he was 16 in his village in Viso. He described the pain as fire shooting through my veins. Like the Calajan runners, he too had a higher level of pain tolerance and perseverance. After all, this is a man who spent 27 years in prison, being abused and tortured, and then became the president of South Africa. Unfortunately, I haven't found any scientific studies on the relationship between pain tolerance and cock-mangling. I doubt I ever will, especially in this country. I just can't imagine a bunch of Westerners volunteering for a study like this. Even though these circumcision stories from Africa are just anecdotal experiences, they have strong implications that improving your ability to handle pain is a learned skill. I don't need any fancy study to prove to me that exposing yourself to facial scarring, beatings, and penis manipulation can toughen you up to future pain. As I said earlier, the research on enhancing your capacity to pain is limited, but it is still very eye-opening. Instead of boring you with tedious details, I'm going to give you a quick summary of the history of improving one's pain threshold in a lab setting. Early scientific studies were done to investigate how pain impacted athletic performance. The majority of the early research was based on the central governor and lactic acid theories. Both are now very controversial topics, and some in the athletic performance world even consider these concepts outdated. Nowadays, many experts can't even agree on how lactic acid affects your training. The early theories believed that lactic acid was the burning sensation you feel in your muscles when you push yourself. This buildup of lactic acid was what caused fatigue. However, current research suggests that lactic acid does not cause muscle exhaustion, but it is actually a potent energy source for your muscles. The pain in your muscles is caused by an accumulation of hydrogen ions, and not the vilified lactic acid that scientists thought was the culprit. The newest theories state that lactic acid is a source of power and stamina, and not the reason you are crashing. However, many coaches and trainers aren't aware of the current studies and take the old-time approach that lactic acid is the enemy. I'm not going to get into a scientific argument here. The burn may or not be caused by lactic acid. I'm not interested in what is the exact chemistry that is going on in your body when you are doing an intense workout, nor do I care if lactic acid or hydrogen ions are causing you to hit the wall. What causes the burning and aching in your muscles is irrelevant. We all feel it, and we know it exists. That we can all agree on. Also, I would say that most coaches, athletes, and lab scientists would probably agree that in order for athletes to improve, they must occasionally push themselves past the burning of their muscles and go on. Many people call this technique lactic acid threshold training. The concept is pretty straightforward. To get one to advance in their athletic endeavor, they must break through pain barriers. The only way to do this is to do a lot of difficult and demanding training. You probably will get 100% consensus among the sports performance crowd that overcoming discomfort is the key to reaching new heights. However, getting athletes to significantly raise their pain tolerance has been the big mystery and the million-dollar question. People may still argue if lactic acid is your friend or foe, but just about everyone will agree that getting one to tolerate pain better is the holy grail in the sports improvement world. The second major concept in the pain performance world is the central governor theory. The concept is based on the assumption that the brain has an innate warning system. If your brain perceives that you are pushing it too hard, this central governor will get you to quit to protect your safety and health. In other words, anytime your central governor thinks that you are pushing your limit to dangerous levels, it will automatically shut your body down. What the central governor theory suggests is that we all have a cap on how much agony and pain we can take before we eventually give up. The goal for sports performance coaches in the early 2000s was to get their athletes to push as close as possible to their pain threshold before their inner central governor would get activated and get them to concede. Although the central governor exercise model was the dominant theory on pain threshold in athletics for the past 2 decades, it had major flaws. The major problem with this elusive and undetectable part of the brain is that it can't explain all the extraordinary acts of determination and go way beyond normal pain thresholds we've seen with Navy SEAL candidates getting through BUD/S, ultramarathon runners, prisoners of war, and survivors of natural disasters and terminal illness. If this central governor really existed, it would have stopped these amazing people from pushing forward. Even Dr. Tim Noakes, who coined the term central governor, now questions if it really exists and calls it an unproven hypothesis. In many of his interviews, he does a complete 180 and talks about the strength of the mind to strive past fatigue and pain. By doing so, he is disproving his early concept of this ambiguous central governor. The lack of scientific evidence supports Noakes' debunking of his former thesis. It just seems that the brain doesn't have this so-called central governor system that reduces and hinders our ability to absorb pain. In fact, there are thousands of inspirational stories of humans having an unbelievable capacity to persevere through the worst forms of suffering and tap into reserves of strength and stamina to overcome their painful circumstances. Science has been searching for the wrong reasons on how to overcome pain. Instead of arguing about what lactic acid is or isn't, or where in the brain this central governor is, what they needed to study was the power of the human spirit. And that's what a brilliant researcher from Italy has been doing. Dr. Samuele Marcora is the leading expert on how your mind can lead you past pain and achieve unbelievable feats. Recent research done mostly by Dr. Marcora suggests that we have the ability to take on loads of pain, and there is no restriction to how much suffering we can take. Dr. Marcora's finding completely contradicts the central governor theory that suggests there is a limit to how much pain humans can endure. He too even questions if this central governor theory is real. In his laboratory studies, he has demonstrated that athletes have the capacity to go on and even maintain their strength and endurance even though they may mistakenly think that they have run out of energy. In one of his most famous experiments, he had subjects go all out on sprints on stationary bikes, then ride for an extended period of time at a maximum level until they couldn't go anymore. Physically and emotionally exhausted, the subjects thought the experiment was over, but Marcora then surprised them and directed the participants to do one more hard sprint at maximum effort. Even though the subjects thought they were totally spent, they actually were able to produce even more power than their previous maximum levels. From this experiment, and many more similar ones, Dr. Marcora concludes that most athletes, during a hard performance, never even come close to reaching their physical limits. This all suggests that when it comes to endurance sports, like long-distance running or cycling, you are not held back by muscle fatigue, but the exhaustion in your head. Dr. Marcora calls this the psychological model of exercise tolerance. What determines your limitation and ability to go on is how much mental pain you can take. You give up not because your body is tired, but because your mind is tired. The implications of Dr. Marcora's studies suggest that we all have way more juice and spark in us, no matter how empty we think our tank is. It is about how we perceive, interpret, or process your suffering that will determine if you will give up or go further. I italicize all those words to emphasize that pain is completely and 100% subjective. What these verbs suggest is that suffering is all in the eye of the beholder. Your thoughts of the pain are way more important than the literal feeling of your discomfort. If this is how your mind operates, the key to preserving thought discomfort is to trick yourself into thinking and believing that your pain isn't that bad. That is what Matt Fitzgerald, the author of the great book, How Bad Do You Want It?, expands on from Marcora's psychobiological theory. Like Dr. Marcora, Matt believes that the human body is capable of tolerating extreme levels of pain that are above and beyond astonishing. But what holds you back is not your physique, talent, or even the physical pain. What stops and slows you down is what you think about your suffering. If you feel that the pain you are going through isn't that bad, you will go on. But if your perception of your pain is worse than what you think you can handle, you will give up. This is called perception of effort, and I consider Matt Fitzgerald an expert when it comes to this concept. To raise your threshold to pain, you must do one or two things. First, you must lower your perception of effort. In other words, you have to see the challenging task you are doing as easier than before, or at the very least, you aren't in the same hell as before. Here's a good example of lowering one's perception of effort and excelling through the pain that you struggled to handle before in the past. Jill is a CrossFitter. However, she hates doing burpees. Any workout that consists of burpees is very painful for her. Tired of being held back for her weakness with this movement, she commits to doing 50 burpees every day. Every time she does them, she feels miserable as she tussles through the burpees. But Jill commits to doing 50 burpees every day for 2 weeks. In the third week, she had to do a WOD that consists of burpees. As she does the workout, she notices that she's not in as much agony with this movement as before. Compared to a couple of weeks ago, burpees feel much easier to Jill now as she cruises through the WOD. You may argue that Jill's pain threshold was elevated because she improved her ability to do tons of burpees. She adapted to the movement. Getting strong is always a great thing for athletes, but the physical part is only part of the answer. What also changed is how Jill perceived doing burpees during the workout. Instead of seeing burpees as outright dreadful, she began to see them as less dreadful. More importantly, Jill believed that she could handle the discomfort from all those burpees and push through the WOD without physically tiring out or getting mentally drained. She did this by lowering her perception of effort with regard to doing burpees. When it comes to tolerance to pain, it's a balance between how motivated you are for the activity and how difficult you find it. Lowering your perception of pain is one of the key concepts that correlates with some of the 10 mental strategies you will use from this book. Without a doubt, this technique can help you handle more discomfort in your training and in life while moving forward. However, the downfall of training to reduce your perception of pain is that you must put yourself in uncomfortable situations and workouts very often. This may be a huge snag for you, especially if you have a strong aversion to aches and breathlessness. But once you see how successful you can be when you relish in pain, you will be a convert. The second way to improve your pain-fighting skills is to raise your threshold to the agony. This is a little more difficult and more of an advanced skill set. This method requires you to embrace the upcoming horrible situation and be okay with it. Needlessly, you see yourself as the kind of person who can not only take brutal forms of punishment, but also thrive in challenging situations. This exceptional ability won't happen immediately, but with time and incremental victories, you will slowly start to see yourself as somebody that can absorb tons of punishment. This is true empowerment. Shifting your identity to this level is the ultimate goal of this training. In this training, you will learn to perceive your suffering from both points of view. Lowering your perception and raising your tolerance to pain works. I use both of them interchangeably, depending on my mood or mindset for that day. Whenever I experience unbearable pain but find a way to get through it, I always give props to the work of Dr. Mokora and Matt Fitzgerald. Their ideas and insights help push me to gain a greater understanding of what pain really is and how to topple it. You can do the same. The science of suffering is legit, as the work from Dr. Mokora and others continues to evolve in laboratories and artificial settings. You will read more of the research in the upcoming chapters, but sometimes lessons can be learned from more real-life environments without those nerds in white coats. The data may not be there, but sometimes you don't need analytics to prove your point. All you need is the unthinkable stories of resilience from one remarkable man, Dr. David Goggins. Nobody has explored pain and kicked its ass more than this man. David Goggins is the king of conquering pain. His life is a true inspiration and an example of how you can overcome and endure unspeakable levels of pain. What you and I can learn from this man will take our lives to new heights. By doing so, we all can suffer better. One Man's Journey, an Odyssey into the World of Pain. My respect for David Goggins is heart-filled. I admire his story, teachings, and quick Instagram of motivation. I'm going to have to assume you know who he is. If not, put this book down and spend a day learning about his achievements, or better yet, read his autobiography, You Can't Hurt Me. He is unofficially titled the toughest man on earth, and rightfully so. This former Navy SEAL and ultra runner is on another level when it comes to dueling and outlasting pain. But he's not just an aloof brute. He's a one-of-a-kind hero to his thousands of followers who are inspired by his daily practice of putting pain in its proper place. The humble Mr. Goggins doesn't think he possesses any magical powers. He considers himself an average guy who learned to be extraordinary through pain. His list of doing the impossible includes running 100 miles on broken feet and near kidney failure, or having to go through Navy SEAL BUD/S training not only once, but 3 times. Those are just a couple of his physical feats. What is haunting, and I could never forget, are those painful stories of abuse that he took from his asshole father when he was a kid. I cannot get over those heartbreaking stories of his learning disabilities and low self-esteem issues while being taunted for being black in his racist high school. Through it all, David Goggins has transformed all these painful experiences into crucial turning points in his life. These are all remarkable examples of the human spirit that David exemplifies. My love for him can go on, but what connected me to him the most was his positive mindset about suffering. Like the Stoics and Buddhists, David views suffering as not only a fact of life, but a necessity. According to him, suffering is a great tool to callous your mind. In many of his interviews, David explains that suffering is a gift because of all you can gain from moving past your struggles. He emphasized over and over that he wouldn't be his new and improved self without the pain that taught him that he can endure just about anything. Also, like the two old philosophies, Goggins is a firm believer in putting yourself in uncomfortable positions on a daily basis. Many people are actually shocked when they find out that David actually doesn't like running, swimming, or even public speaking. But he does these things because he hates doing them. That's exactly the point. In David's world, doing things that repeatedly suck is how you improve your ability in them and solidify your mind to pain so that it doesn't hurt that bad the next time you do it. Ironically, David is pretty damn good in all these activities that he hates, but repeatedly does. This approach is similar to Fitzgerald's perception of effort theory. In other words, the more you do something awful, the easier it will feel in the future. But there are other similarities between Stoics, Buddhists, Dr. Makora, Fitzgerald, and Goggins. All of these great thinkers are firm believers that pain is mostly in your head. What these pain activists believe is that you must learn to always reframe your pain to your advantage. Goggins says it best. With every bad thing that I went through in my life, the 2 heart surgeries, all the name calling, if you learn to flip that motherfucker on top of its head and say, hang on, there's so much power in this fucking thing. Classic Goggins. It's not the event itself that causes pain, but it is the story that you spin in your mind that determines how you will feel. Goggins believes wholeheartedly that you can always shift your experience of pain to a narrative of potential growth. He goes on to say, you have to look at the pain as a trail ground of where you have to go. It's all a test. Here's another example of turning a painful negative event into a positive learning experience. 2 MMA fighters lose their fight on the same night. They both experience the same result, which is the pain of losing. However, the first fighter sees the loss as a sign of his lack of talent, so he goes into a major depression. But the second fighter views the loss as a stepping stone. He understands and takes responsibility for his mistakes and goes to the gym with vengeance to make improvements. Both fighters were in great pain after their losses, but they ended up taking different directions as a result of how they processed their disappointing loss. If I was doing my best Goggins imitation in describing the MMA fighter with a positive outlook, I would say, this is what I call flipping this motherfucking loss upside down on its fucking head. But the comparison between all these pain experts doesn't stop there. Dr. Makora's psychobiological model and Goggins' 40% rule are very similar. Goggins' 40% rule is when you think you are done or too tired to go on, but you put in only 40% of what you are truly capable of doing. You have 60% more in you. Goggins' 40% rule is a reminder that no matter how low you are feeling, you can always draw from the untapped source of power, inspiration, and determination in you. Ironically, the first thing David suggests is that you must remove your inner governor that is holding you back. It is unclear if David is implying that this inner governor is the same as Noakes' central governor, but the concept is the same. Your mind is holding you back and limiting you. Unfortunately, there's no official science to back up Goggins' 40% rule. I'm going to assume it would be very difficult to measure this mysterious 60% of strength or stamina in you. In fact, I would say that the percentage and ratio of Goggins' 40% rule are pretty arbitrary and even irrelevant. It could even be called the 1% rule, or even the 99.999% rule. The main point of Goggins' 40% rule is this. No matter how tired or weak you are feeling, you always have more in your tank. You just have to dig deep to find it. Just like the scientific research from Dr. Makora, multiple studies on the psychobiological model have shown that no matter how exhausted you are, you can always go further and even push a little bit harder. But unlike the psychobiological model, there is no pure data to back up the 40% rule. However, I don't need spreadsheets to support Goggins' claim. I have more than enough personal evidence for myself and others who applied Goggins' message of persistence under extreme fatigue. Not giving up and moving forward over and over again is all the confirmation that I need. I'm 100% convinced the 40% rule is a real thing in all of us. I've connected with it, and you will soon. The Stoics, the Buddhists, Dr. Makora, Matt Fitzgerald, and David Goggins are the pioneers of defeating pain. Their work has influenced and improved the lives of millions of leaders, athletes, cancer survivors, and those who overcame unspeakable forms of suffering. This is a great example of how voices from the past and courage in the present are working simultaneously to make this world a less painful place to be in. Fortunately, the work and investigation continue. I recently discovered a crucial piece of information that will even solidify your capacity to handle pain. It's the work of a brilliant neuroscientist from Stanford. His research is the linchpin and holds the final piece of the puzzle that will ensure and teach you how to suffer better in life. Moving in the right direction. Dr. Andrew Huberman is another badass that belongs to this elite group of pain fighters. According to Wikipedia, he has made numerous important contributions to the fields of brain development, brain plasticity, and neural regeneration and repair. In other words, he is 100 times smarter than you and I, so I suggest we listen to him. Dr. Huberman is not a researcher on pain per se, but his work can be used to improve your pain tolerance skills. Scientific theories on the brain can be quite complex and full of jargon, but I will simplify and shorten Dr. Huberman's contribution for you meatheads and science haters. If you want a more in-depth look at Dr. Huberman's work, I highly suggest you check out his podcast. You won't be disappointed. It was once believed that dopamine is the feel-good hormone that your body releases only when you reach your goals. However, from Dr. Huberman's research, you also get strong hits of dopamine while you are in pursuit of what you are chasing. You may not achieve your long-term goal, but if you are moving in the right direction of where you want to be, your brain will reward you by releasing this happy hormone. This is crucial because you are in the midst of battling a painful challenge. You need all the help you can get in order to move forward. Also, whenever you exert effort, your brain releases the hormone norepinephrine, which energizes you, but can also wear you down in the long run. Dopamine can buffer the draining effect of too much norepinephrine. The problem most people have while struggling through an uncomfortable situation is that they don't register it as an event that benefits them, nor do they make the connection that the pain they are experiencing will have a positive after effect on their personal or athletic growth. They just perceive the situation they are in as bad and want to rid themselves of it as quickly as possible. This black and white mindset does not lend itself to growth or get your brain to shoot out some much-needed dopamine into your system. But if you see the discomfort, rejection, disappointment, or suffering as you are getting closer to your goal or the person you want to be, you will get a rush of dopamine while lessening the consequence of too much norepinephrine. Finding the small achievements in your pain is crucial because it will increase your chances exponentially and make you continue to lean into future incidences of suffering. This is the power of dopamine and how it can hack your suffering. A huge aspect of elevating your strength with pain is to be very introspective and reflective. You have to look for microscopic moments of success in your agony, or better yet, you must have the ability to see growth in the invisible and in the intangibles in all your heavy-duty sessions of suffering. For example, if you have been avoiding an important talk with your partner and you finally get the nerve to do it, your goal was to not only find a resolution, but to listen to your partner without getting angry. Even though the discussion was rough and you didn't get the results you were looking for, you still stayed in the painful conversation without blowing up. By accomplishing your intention and validating yourself, you got a dopamine release that enabled you to endure the difficult talk. In the past, you probably would have tantrum and run off, but this time, you remained calm and even found the courage to broach the subject. On the outside, this may not look like much, but on the inside, this is a huge improvement for you, as you took a small step toward becoming the brave and supportive person you wish to be. Here's another example. You are going for a new PR in the mile. In your past attempts, you gave it all you got, but in the final 400 meters, the pain and fatigue became too much. So instead of running hard, you coast. Your goal this time is to finish your run with maximal effort. As you run your mile and approach the final lap, the discomfort hits you hard. Your legs begin to seize, and your lungs feel as if they are going to explode. You feel the same urge to slow down and mentally give up, but you remind yourself of your goal to finish in a dominant manner. You push it and handle the pain better than you did in your previous runs. However, you miss breaking your personal record by a few seconds and feel disappointed. But during your reflection, you realize that you didn't give in to the pain and had the will to face it. You reward yourself with words of encouragement while getting a hit of the power hormone. Overall, you now see the run as a huge improvement, and you feel confident that you will break your PR soon because you are headed in the right direction. It is an invaluable skill to convert small and trivial moments to pivotal life-enhancing turning points in the direction you wish to go. But most importantly, you must link all your sufferings as the right path to your dreams, goals, and growth. This is exactly what Dr. Huberman has discovered, especially with those that live in hostile and very uncomfortable environments. Dr. Huberman works with SEALs, special forces, and other occupations that put themselves in stressful situations on a daily basis. What gets these warriors through a painful day on the job is the unique internal reward system they have. These people who work in chaotic situations must dose themselves often with dopamine to get them going, while at the same time muffling their norepinephrine response. If not, they would fall apart. The way they do this is by perceiving difficult actions and painful circumstances as the route to where they must go. For every little win or mini goal they accomplish during their battles, their brains reward them with a dab of dopamine, which pushes them to go on, despite the awful circumstances they are in. These people who flourish over discomfort have what Dr. Huberman calls an internal reward system. By this, they know how to internally boost themselves up during painful moments by giving themselves a rush of the feel-good and focus-enhancing hormone dopamine, so that they can return to business as usual. According to Dr. Huberman, the lift that we get is not some psychological pump-up. It's a neurochemical thing. It is dopamine suppressing norepinephrine and saying you're on the right path. You can keep going. It's the permission to keep going, and we grant that permission to ourselves. No one grants that permission to us. What Dr. Huberman is saying is that if you have your internal reward system in place, you will not only override pain, but you will keep pushing yourself forward from intermittent shots of dopamine. It is not only mental, but a chemical response in your brain that drives you to go on. This 1-2 punch is unbeatable when the odds are stacked against you to accomplish what you need to finish during a stressful period. But what makes Dr. Huberman's concept of self-reward so exciting is that you decide what and when you should reinforce yourself. The ramification of Dr. Huberman's internal reward system is mind-blowing. It suggests that pleasure, like pain, is 100% subjective. Once again, it comes down to how you view and perceive the chaos you are in. At any given time or moment, you can interpret and find little nanoseconds of joy in the hostile and tumultuous situation you are in. This capacity to discover brief periods of pleasure and then reward yourself is within your control. By doing so, you can continue to tolerate the pain and move toward what you are trying to achieve. Let me give you an extreme example of what I mean. Let's say you are a Navy SEAL. You are on a mission to capture a deadly terrorist. While moving closer to where the target is, you are suddenly attacked by rapid gunfire. You run behind a car and duck as bullets whiz past you. Using the car to protect yourself probably saved your life. You acknowledge this and feel a sense of gratitude and happiness to be alive. By doing so, your internal reward system gives you a squirt of dopamine. You then gather your composure, refocus, start firing back as you move a couple of feet closer to the enemy. Eventually, the attackers surrender, and you apprehend your target. Most people won't find a rush of joy when bullets are fired at them, but in this case, it was a sign that the bullets missed you and you are still alive. By feeling lucky and grateful, your body rewards you with some of its super dopamine juice so that you can improve your focus and continue to function under extreme levels of discomfort. Both pain and pleasure are all about the context of the situation and how you uniquely interpret the circumstance. Here's a different example of a more realistic predicament that you can probably relate with. When I was in debt with the IRS, I was a mess. Whenever I would get those official scary letters from the Internal Revenue System, I would throw them in a pile. I was too terrified to read the contents of these letters. However, when the IRS put a lien on my bank account, I had to face the consequences of my denial. I sat down and, with my hands trembling, heart pounding, and body flooded with norepinephrine, opened the first letter. The content of the letter was horrifying and threatening, but at the same time, I felt proud of myself to finally find the courage to do so. I verbally acknowledged this aloud to myself. This enabled me to go on and read the rest of them. The act of opening and reading a letter may seem trivial on its own, but in the context of the predicament I was in, it was a very significant move. Every time I opened one and read it, I felt a sense of great accomplishment as my internal reward system started to positively reinforce me with both a sense of pride and shots of dopamine. This frivolous act of reading letters was the beginning of my resilience and a sure sign I was moving in the right direction of overcoming my debt. Nothing ever changes without some degree of discomfort. It all comes down to this. You can always find small victories in huge problematic situations. Your incremental achievements may not seem like much or even visible to others, but it doesn't matter. What is crucial is that you label and process them as meaningful stepping stones while rewarding yourself with a pat on the back whenever you reach them. By doing so, you will tolerate the present and future discomfort better. As long as you continue to move where you need to go, your brain will give you the prize of a huge dopamine blast while tapering down norepinephrine. This will ensure that you will repeat your actions toward your long-term goals while tolerating whatever painful bullshit gets in your way. This is the gist of Dr. Huberman's brilliant work on the internal reward system, and it will be a central part of your training to become a person who can handle pain like a pro. As you have probably noticed, there is plenty of overlap with him and the Stoics, the Buddhists, Dr. Morcora, Fitzgerald, and Goggins. They all agree on this. You can tolerate higher levels of pain than you ever imagined while working toward your most ambitious dreams. But what Dr. Huberman brings to the table of pain is distinguishable. His work on the brain and hormones is a highly credible resource that you can't ignore. When you apply Dr. Huberman's findings to your training, not only will you break your perceived shortcomings and do amazing things, but this is how you will suffer better in life. How to use this book. In each chapter, I will introduce a new mental skill to up your tolerance to pain. There are 10 of them. You must apply the skills to both your training and the challenges you face in life. At the end of each day, write down your experiences in a journal. Look for what worked, what was very strong, and how you can make it better. Self-reflection is vital to your development. Take it seriously, and it will help you measure your progress. If you ignore writing about your experiences, your potential will stall. Also, it is essential that you rest and get a good night's sleep after a day of getting out of your comfort zone. Always remind yourself that your recovery must match the intensity of your training. If you don't find ways to relax from the stress of your challenges, you will be too weary to train. Do some stretches, go for walks, or even zone out during Netflix. Find activities that will relax you before you go to bed. When you get up, reflect on your painful challenges that you have to face and prepare for them. Have at least 5 tasks that you know will be uncomfortable. In terms of training, strive to do more than 2 workouts that are above and beyond your normal pain threshold. This means that you must raise the stakes of your training. You have to face training sessions that make you feel a sense of hesitation to do them. If you find yourself trying to weasel out of the workouts, it is a sign that these workouts are probably loaded with discomfort. Face them and go all out with 100% effort and push through the discomfort as much as you can. Twice a week is more than enough for high-intensity training. Going balls to the wall or training to failure every time will burn out your central nervous system. Plan your higher-intensity workouts in advance and always space them apart between multiple days. This does not mean that on your lower-intensity days you get to coast. In every workout, there will always be points in your training where you can go a little further. When you catch yourself slacking off, just remind yourself of Goggins' 40% rule. Find moments to test your ability to handle the discomfort without going completely overboard. Also, you always want to be ultra-conservative when you have an injury. Let it heal, and when it gets better, ease into it. The general rule is this: be cautious when you have some sort of sharp joint pain during any workout. When you feel a jolt in your joints, you should stop immediately. This is especially true if your training partner has a Kimura or choke on you. This book is not about withstanding the pain when somebody's about to break your arm or put you to sleep. Tap out. Holding on to see how much you can take is just stupid. If you feel that something is not right, or you feel ill or lightheaded, always stop. This always means that you shouldn't train to the point where you feel nauseous or want to vomit. Be smart, people. Being hurt, ill, or dead is never a fun thing. You've got to know the difference between good and bad pain. Good pain is when the agony leads to muscle growth, athletic development, and personal empowerment, while bad pain can lead to hurting yourself in a bad way that leads to intensive care or keep you out of training for months. Use your common sense and learn to differentiate between the two. Don't think you can become a pain-defying machine after 1 or 2 sessions. Like anything else, change takes time. Just notice how much more muscle burning, lung hurting, or leg quivering you can push yourself past through that you normally couldn't do. Again, pain tolerance is very subjective. Tracking your pain threshold is even more difficult and skewed. You can measure your development through more reps, more weight, or a faster time. Sometimes, just doing that one extra rep when you're about to drop the weight is a sign that you are toughening up to pain. Look for subtle moments like this, and reward yourself with a hit of dopamine for heading on the other side of pain. But the best way to find progress is to deal with a voice that tells you to quit. When your negative self commands you to stop, how do you respond to it? Do you continue to give in to it, or do you go further? How you come back to your inner quitter is the best sign of progress or regression. Your ability to go on, even if it's doing extra 50 yards more than your run, makes all the difference. When the quitter in you is yelling at you to stop, don't yield to that voice. It is during tempting moments of weakness like this that you must flip your fatigue, or lack of strength, and prove to yourself that you can endure the discomfort and go on. When you do, verbally reward yourself for moving in the right direction of being an athlete who is working on his pain threshold capacity. Enjoy that dopamine hit. These little actions of moving past pain will add up and build confidence in your ability to suddenly find a vessel of power during times of fatigue and pain. This feeling of reversing exhaustion or pain to unstoppable force is the quality of champions. Not everyone can do this. Only those who use their suffering and dig deep into it to find a reserve of strength can do this. Tapping into the invulnerable skill begins once you learn how to see through the deception game your mind is playing with you. You can't do this, you're too tired, or you can't handle this pain, are all just lies. The problem you had in the past, when you were a no-good quitter, is that you believed in these self-made distortions. But when you understand that these are just made-up stories you have floating around in your head, you can smash through them and discover a burst of determination so potent that you will want to run through a brick wall. Once you experience this astonishing ability to convert your painful fatigue into unstoppable energy, you won't puss out anymore. It will be a huge turning point and light bulb moment in your training, as if you discovered something magical. This is the mysterious second wind that all the great ones have. But what you will discover is that your second wind is not physical, but 100% mental. Experiencing this for yourself will be a radical turnaround in your athletic performance. With practice, you will then transfer this second wind capacity and apply it to your personal problems. When it comes to your life, you must seek out situations that scare you or you have been avoiding. For a majority of life's obstacles, the suffering takes place before the task. You fret and worry about how awful it's going to be. By doing so, you inadvertently make this upcoming discomfort worse than it really is. The 10 mental strategies will help you lean into the buzzsaw of life's problems. Once you are engaged in the stressful task, use those mental strategies to stay as long as you possibly can in the activity. If you have to stop because the emotional stress is too much, then do so. But make sure that you stay a little longer than expected and get your dopamine released by reminding yourself that you are moving toward the person you wish to be. This will increase your capacity to tolerate the chaos. Don't expect to completely overcome the adversity in only a couple of attempts. Some daunting obstacles take days, weeks, and even months. Keep going after it while using the mental tools to motivate you to get started and handle the pain of the setbacks, dead ends, and unexpected surprises that come with adversities. The obvious problem with real-life discomfort is that it is very difficult to measure if you are not in a lab setting hooked up to all sorts of monitors and high-tech sensors. I have already established that emotional and mental pain is very individualized. But what you can track is the number of times you move into pain, go on, avoid, and/or give up. This is a more realistic way to chart your pain threshold progress. For this training, as long as you engage in an uncomfortable task and stay in it, it is a sign that you're improving your skill to tackle painful situations. Take it and run with it. Also, like in your physical training, monitor how you deal with your negative self-talk. If you can take action despite your inner critic shouting at you to avoid the circumstances, that's a huge sign of progress. Look for moments like this. Always reward and validate yourself with complimentary words when you reach your minor milestones. Weave recognition of your hard work in and out during your crisis. This will keep you connected to your internal reward system. The worst thing you can do is to reinforce yourself with external rewards like food, shopping, or other people's approval. If you rely on external gifts, you will burn out very quickly when you run out of these external rewards to give yourself. In order to develop as a pain-fighting warrior, the reward must come from within yourself. You have to find the whole experience of facing pain and getting through it very satisfying. If not, this training is not for you. The goal of this work is to get you to engage with uncomfortable activities to break personal boundaries. It is not about being invisible to suffering and living in a pain-free world. That's totally unrealistic, especially when you do things that are important to you. Some sort of mental anguish will always be attached to meaningful goals. This work is about doing what you need to do while absorbing painful obstacles that get in your way. Nevertheless, the goal of this book is not to always get peak performance in all uncomfortable situations. It will be great if this always happens, and most of the time, you will outdo yourself and excel while suffering, but don't expect to always shine during these real-life sufferfests that you are in. Sometimes, having a strong tolerance to pain can be very ugly and downright messy. It's a moment-to-moment, second-to-second experience where you put your head down and be as functional as you can through the struggle. Besides being graceful under stress, roughing it when you are at your worst is a sign of having a higher tolerance to suffering. Sometimes taking one tiny action in a horrifying predicament is the only thing you can do. Be okay with that. You are still closing in on the gap between your agony and what you want. Register your behavior, validate your courage, and take in the dopamine rush. Move on. There is always tomorrow. As you get into a groove with this pain threshold training, begin to see how these mental strategies affect both your ability to rise above discomfort in your training and in life. They should directly impact each other. As you get stronger and more resilient in your gym life, your personal life should grow as well. Look for the opposite as well. As you begin to conquer the pain from personal adversities, it should give you the momentum to be even more of a beast in the gym. The synergy is what you are after. It is what makes this training so unique and life-changing. Once you discover this powerful insight that busting through pain in the gym and life is the same goddamn thing, your world will open up to you. Possibilities will abound and limitations will be buried. The fear of hurt will no longer hold you back. On the contrary, the feeling of pain will now be your personal and most trustworthy compass. It is a sign that you are moving in the right direction. Let's start today. Your new life begins when you learn how to suffer better.